Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome Deborah Heiser here, who is an applied development psychologist, a CEO of the Mentor Project, and author of The Mentorship Edge. So we're going to get to know her, have a great conversation. Deborah, tell us a little bit more about you.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on your show. I'm really excited to be here.
My
Um,
pleasure.
I'm an applied developmental psychologist, which it took me quite a while to get to that. But basically, I decided to study aging,
Mhm.
and I was studying everything you ever don't want to get or have, like dementia, depression, frailty, all of that. And I ended up, someone at a conference said, "Hey, what do you have to look forward to as you get older?" And I didn't have an answer. And that really bothered me because I really thought I was doing amazing work and, was feeling really great about it all. And then I said, "Well, what am I actually doing?" And the person said, "Are you just putting a band-aid on life as we get older?" And I thought, "Oh, ouch, that hurts." So I decided to look at, you know, what do we have to look forward to? And the research out there was not well known at all to individuals, but it's been studied for about 75 years in some aspects. None of it was really put together in any kind of way that made sense. So I started to try to really look at it and make some sense of it, and realized that in midlife, we hit an emotional development stage where, right when we're starting to notice our physical decline, we start to really notice, like I start to wear glasses and I can't run as fast and things like that, but things that don't really bother us. But at that point, that's when our emotions shift and we get happier and we have a desire, and that never wanes, that never goes down as we get older. It only goes up, that getting happier, just as our sort of frailty, our physical decline starts to happen, our emotional incline starts to happen right around midlife. And so I really wanted to understand why and how that was. So it turns out there's a stage called generativity that you hit at about midlife, and it's
Mhm.
where you have a desire to give back without expecting anything in return. So it's not reciprocal. It's not like you do this for me, I'll do that for you. I'll scratch your back, you scratch mine. It's where we're like, hey, have all those boxes that I've checked mattered? Do I matter? Does my life matter? And so what we want to do at that point is to give back a piece of ourself, and we want somebody to accept that and want it.
Mhm.
So an example of that not, happening is Ebenezer Scrooge from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. He's a guy on paper who had everything. He was a million, like millionaire. He was rich. He lived in a mansion. He had people taking care of all of his needs. And then he was miserable, utterly miserable. And then when he gave back, and started caring about others, he became happy. And that's really how it works for us. And there's three ways we can engage in that. And that is mentoring, volunteering, and philanthropy.
Mhm.
And philanthropy is out of reach for a lot of people, and you don't always feel great if you can only give $1 here and there. Volunteering is great, and most people do all three of these, but some of us just pick one. But volunteering is somebody else's dream. And mentoring is the only one that we're giving back a piece of ourselves to somebody else. And so I wanted to look at that and find out, what the real deal was with that. And that was how I came about to start the Mentor Project, is I found a lot of really high level people who wanted to give back and mentor, but they didn't have access to mentees.
Mhm.
So one of the guys who was the father of the one of the fathers of the firewall, which is how we communicate safely online, said, "I'm retiring and I live on a farm. There's no kids nearby. I can't go to a park and say, 'Hey kid, do you want to learn quantum mechanics?'" So, we wanted to solve that problem. So a few of us founded the Mentor Project, and then it turned from 10 to 60 to 80 to more than 100. People wanted to do it, give their time for free and we're still going. We're 5 years in, and just this year, we're not even done with the year, and we've given away more than $2 million of mentoring hours to students for free. And so there's something to this. There's something to mentoring. And most people think of it as the grab that you could get as a mentee. How can somebody pull me up? But I look at it from what is the most precious natural resource that we have? It's our experts. And what do they want to give back? And that's really what the Mentor Project is about. And the Mentorship Edge is really talking about what is mentoring, how do we do it, what's it like from the mentor's perspective, what's it like from the mentee's perspective, how does it look not just laterally at work, or I mean hierarchically at work, but how does it look laterally in our personal lives and work, and how can we engage in it more often so that we aren't wasting our most precious natural resources.
Or like me and a lot of others that are just trying to do something to get our way into heaven.
Well, that is what generativity is in a way, right? You want to, like, you're doing that with this podcast. You are mentoring others. You're providing something. Nobody has to reach back out to you and give you something. That's a form of modern mentorship. Before, when mentoring was first defined, we didn't have all of this technology. So yeah, is it a way to get into heaven by doing amazing good things? Sure, but it's also a really great way to feel good while we're here on Earth.
So you've studied a lot about aging.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you something. Do you find that most people, not all, but most people get really sentimental the older they get?
So there are a couple of things that I'll say, and that is that yes, we all like to reflect, but if we're living in the past mostly, I think that's a red flag. And I would say, hey, I want to maybe see if that person is feeling a bit of depression. So if a person is only living in the past, if you're in your 50s and you're only talking about the past, I would wonder why. Is it healthy to do that, at all? Yes, it is. If you're doing it all the time, I would say, where's your vision for the future? It's when a person gets stagnant. That's the Ebenezer Scrooge. He's stagnant. That we want to be able to make sure we're still looking into the future. So reminiscing is good. All of that is absolutely terrific and good, but we want to also make sure that we're looking at the future positively as well.
I always wanted to be able to get in a time machine and go back to the 70s.
Now, what would you do if you did that? If you were to go back in the 70s, what would you do?
Oh, I would go and get my old Star Wars toys and $6 Million Man and all that stuff and not let my mom throw them away.
I think every mom has some evil trait, myself included, where we all throw away the prized possessions of our children when they're young.
Oh my gosh, some of the stuff that I've seen that is for sale, I had, and I could probably put all my kids through or grandkids through college with the amount that stuff's worth. I just find myself reminiscing a lot, and I
Mhm.
do it quite a bit. And there are times where, I don't like this era, and I wished I could go back and live back then. So depression,
You
maybe.
know, there are a few things that I've noticed with aging and going into the decades, right? And that is that those transitions to new decades. So when you hit midlife, and then when you hit what would be considered, old age, those can be hard transitions for us. And that's because we don't know what the future holds, but we know what the past held, right?
Mhm.
There's comfort in the past, and there's anxiety and insecurity about the future. And most of us think of aging or getting older or being older as, is this it? Is my time over? Am I done? What do I have to look forward to? And I'll tell you that our lives, most of us think of aging as a physical process,
Mhm.
And we forget that there's a lot of emotion. Emotion is as important as physical, but we disregard that. So if I were to show you a stock portfolio option that had like an inverted V, it goes up and down. I'll try to make it so it goes on the screen, up and down. You would say, no, I don't want that. But that is how our physical trajectory looks. We have a steep incline and a slow, steady decline. We accept that all the time. If I show you a stock portfolio option that has an incline that goes up and never goes down, you'd say, I want that. But that's never the one that we choose for our life. That's our emotional trajectory. So we don't think we have a lot to look forward to when we can start to see and feel the changes of midlife. So those decades can sometimes be scary for us because we have not thought of the emotional aspect of what our future holds. So some of the things that our future holds that are really exciting to most of us is that we make a difference in the world. Our footprint made the world different and better, that we made the lives of others better, that we get a choice in who we give things back to, that we have a choice in what our legacy will be. We can then plan for that to be what we want it to be. So in my case, I was able to say, I want to pivot and I want to tell people that we have good things in our future, right? It makes me feel good when I see a person saying, oh, aging doesn't feel scary to me, or that I'm not leaving the world in a scary place for my children or grandchildren. So everybody has a little something of what that is that they're passing on. If we
Mhm.
think of religion and culture in our families and the traditions, that's been passed down for centuries. As I get ready for Thanksgiving, I'm going to be making the turkey and all of the accoutrements that go with it that are handwritten on a recipe card from my grandmother. I'm sure she got that from her great grandmother. And if I leave anything out, then everybody feels like the day is off. And those were things that we might say that's not a big deal, but it sure is once the holidays come around and you have an expectation of what's it going to smell like? What's it going to taste like? Who's going to be around the table? So if we start to look at aging as we're leaving behind a bit of our values and our wisdom and our culture that matter to us, then those are the things that help us to feel like, okay, going into the future isn't as hard. I have something to look forward to, not just to look back at.
I can see mentorship being huge, huge, huge as far as beneficial to your mental health because when my children lived at home, and I could teach them things, and it there was something special and I felt like um, that I meant something because I could pass on my knowledge to my kids, and then once they grew up and moved out and started their own families, well, then that feeling of worth just kind of went downhill. And now I have my grandkids, and now I'm starting to feel that, I mean something again. But like my oldest grandson, he's going into high school. He's not going to spend time with grandpa anymore. I still have the two younger ones, but once they've grown up, unless I have great grandkids come around, I don't want to go back into that funk again. So how do I get involved in something like this?
Well, first of all, with your grandchildren, it's quality, not quantity. So that's really the important thing. But you've already told me about some of the things that really mattered to you from your past. And part of that is also your kids and your grandkids. Family is important to you. Some of your hobbies from the 70s are important to you. Nostalgia. It sounds to me like really acknowledging part of the values and culture that you hold and honing that and making sure that you're passing that along to the next generation is really important. If you take that for granted and you don't acknowledge it, you don't reap the benefits of understanding that you passed anything on. you just feel like you're passing days, not passing knowledge. So, or wisdom or values. I don't know that my grandmother ever knew how meaningful that recipe card was that I still hold and I have in her handwriting, and I made photocopies of it and took pictures of it. But my kids, her great grandkids never met her. And they now have a piece of her living on that. We think of these things as not so important, but they really are. So if there are things that you enjoy that you think, hey, I'd like to pass this on and show people how much that matters and it lives on in them, that's where you're going to get a lot of your sort of good feelings or good vibes about looking at the future and figuring out what those things are. So for you, I have a hunch it's going to be family related. What is it that you want, your family to hold on to? What are those memories? If you are religious, it's making sure that those values are passed on in your family. If you have a culture or food or something that is really valued in your family, or traditions that are really valued, those are intensely important. It's what makes us feel safe. It's what makes us feel connected. Those are some of the things. Obviously, if you have other hobbies or things that you enjoy, connecting with others, it doesn't have to be that you're passing everything down to your children or grandchildren. You can be passing it laterally to other people in your life, who maybe don't know the same things that you know, and you're able to pass that on to them. So this podcast is an example of that. You may not know the people who are getting your wisdom from this, but you have people who are listening and who are going to be taking that in and carrying a little piece of you in them. That's valuable.
I didn't think of it like that.
It's a big deal. Every person who carries a little nugget of Kyle in them is taking that on and passing that on to another person. I'm going to give you an example of how that works, with a real life example. I was talking with Bob Lefkowitz, and he's a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry from 2012.
Mhm.
And one of his very biggest moments, that he told me about, was when he decided, hey, how did I become a Nobel Prize winner? And how did so many people I know become a Nobel Prize winner? I
Mhm.
wonder how that happened. So he made what's called a legacy tree, that he calls a legacy tree, but of mentors. And it was all the people that helped him, all of the people along his level, and those who came after him that he knew of. And he published it. So it looks just like, a DNA chart or an ancestry.com chart.
Mhm.
And he published it in a journal, with his name right in there. And he went to a conference, and somebody came to him afterwards, at the conference, and said, hey, I'm 6 degrees Lefkowitz. And he said, what do you mean? And he said, 5 people worked between you and me, and I'm doing this work. And he said, what's the work? And the guy told him. And Bob could hear his words and his work in this kid who was 6 degrees away from him.
Wow.
Now, none of us usually get that benefit of knowing that, the power that he felt from that, knowing that he made impact and it's not done. It's still living on in this other person, 6 degrees away. So, like every time you're doing a podcast and somebody listens to it and takes a nugget and they pass it on to somebody else and then to somebody else, I mean, it just lives on. And most of us don't think of ourselves as that big rolling snowball that, just rolls on down and collects more and more. So I tell people you should start a legacy tree, because I have a hunch you'll find out that you have more impact than you ever know. Um, and that, there are more things that you do that are mentoring than you'd ever imagine. So every holiday, think of that. Oh, where did that tradition come from? Do I want to start a new one? Every time you do a podcast, every time you write something, you may not see the person who's receiving it, but there's somebody out there carrying a bit of you on. So that example that Bob gave me with making the legacy tree just made something feel very concrete and doable for all of us, that we could, sort of track our our legacy that we're creating.
What's sad is I knew once my grandparents passed away that we were going to see less and less of the family, and that's exactly what happened. Because soon as, especially when my grandpa, he was the first one to go, that's when we started noticing some people didn't come around. We didn't see him at the holidays, and then when grandma was gone, that's it. Now it's just me, my mom, my my kids, and my wife, and everybody else is either gone their separate ways or they've passed away. So it's like the family's just shrinking, shrinking, shrinking. And that bothers me. It really does, because we had such great traditions every year. Everybody gathered for Thanksgiving, Christmas, so on, and we spent time together, and it was more than just exchanging gifts or enjoying a meal. We enjoyed the stories, the whole folks would get together and talk about, well, this happened during the Great Depression or this happened during World War II, and those were great times, and we're just seeing that diminish.
You can try to restart something like that. It doesn't have to be around a holiday. It can be at a new time where you maybe have a summer cousins get together or something like that. But I think that when you notice that there is a gap there, it's an important thing to be able to say, is there a way that I can fill that? Maybe that's with friends. Maybe that's with your family. Maybe you're the one that needs to reach out and say, hey, let's get something going again. I want to have the grandkids and get to know all of the family. Things like that can be very powerful. But I think what you're feeling is the power of legacy, things that are passed down. When you have those moments, we all take for granted, oh, here comes a holiday, here comes, something that's a tradition. We do it and we go through the motions and maybe take for granted the power that it has. So if you can reignite that in your life, I think that you won't take that for granted and you'll be able to continue to pass that along, and you'll feel good about it.
It's worth a try. And then, like I said, unfortunately, there's some of the family that's not even talking anymore.
Mm.
So that sucks. It seems like when that main matriarchy and patriarchy are gone, nobody cares anymore. It sucks.
That's not an unusual story at all. And there are two ways that you can go with that. One is that you can say, I'm going to cherish the quality, the few people that I have that are quality versus quantity. We do that with friends. We, sift through and say, here are my people. I have, maybe a couple close friends and not as many acquaintances or people I don't care about. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to give it a real good faith effort to put it out there that I'm going to try to reignite the relationships of those who want to reignite them in the family and see what you can do. Do you have anything to lose? Probably not.
No, can't be any worse than what it is now.
Yeah. I mean, look, families are messy. Every family is. When you have a lot of people and a lot of relationships, it's not easy. And the one thing that I do know is that meaningful connections are what keeps us going. And it's one of those things that helps us to feel happier. It makes us feel better. Um, so if you are able to get some of those meaningful connections back in your life, it's work when we're working with those that matter to us. Sometimes people just, I don't know your family story. I don't know anybody else's family story who's listening, but it doesn't hurt to give it a shot if it means something to you. The worst case scenario is you are where you are now after trying. But the other thing is, while you're doing that, to really take note of those that you have around you, because it doesn't matter how many, it matters that you have people that you care about who care about you. It can be one person, it doesn't have to be 50. And acknowledge that with those people because they're your tradition. they're your holiday. They're your, knowledge transfer. So treasure those because they are, the vessels that are taking all of your knowledge and wisdom and values and everything else and moving it forward.
Well, if someone wants to get your book, where can they get it?
Anywhere you buy books. So it's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the places you would get a book. And it is on pre-order now. It comes out November 13th. It'll ship out to you on November 13th.
And are you available if other people would like to talk to you about things like aging?
Oh, for sure. If people want to reach out to me, you can find me at deborahheiser.com. If you are a student and looking for a mentor, you can get a free mentor. We offer free mentoring for anyone who is a student of any age at mentorproject.org. If you'd like to support mentorship, we are a fund, donation-based organization. We all volunteer our time. If you are interested in doing that, you can also help to support us that way if you don't need a mentor.
What all subjects do you, is it everything you can imagine, or do you have like certain things that people mentor on?
It's pretty close. We have an astronaut. We have, so if you're interested in NASA or space or flying, we have people like that. We have astrophysicists, we have artists, we have psychologists, we have business people, we have lawyers. We have most everybody there, and they're all the top 1% in their fields. And I'll be completely honest with you, I feel very, very excited about this because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I find it exciting to be able to, I volunteer to do this to make sure that the next generation has the opportunities that maybe I didn't have growing up.
You know how you know when you're getting old? It's
How?
when you hear that top 40 from your high school days playing in the grocery store.
I know, but that's so true. I hear that all the time. That's so true.
Well, I'm going to put all of your links in the description to make it easier for folks to find you. Deborah,
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I know it was short, but it was really nice having you on the show.
It was great being on your show. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you.
And you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button. And for my regulars, you guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. Until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network